Hi, Tyke from Groovy Entertainment. Today we got another book on tape to play for you. Today book is the Xavier Fantastic Discovery from 1984. So let's get started.
Xavier's Fantastic Discovery. Pictures by Lucinda McQueen. Special thanks to Roger and Suzanne Schlafer for bringing the legend to life. When you hear the bunny bee crystals fall, turn the page. Xavier Roberts was 10 the summer he made the fantastic discovery. He was visiting his Aunt Patty and Uncle John, who lived in Georgia. They had taken a special interest in Xavier after his father had died, and he liked visiting them. The problem was that they lived way out in the countryside. They didn't have any neighbors, so there was nobody for Xavier to play with. He began to get lonely, and he spent many long hours that summer dreaming of magical adventures and drawing pictures of what he dreamed about. On the day this story begins, Xavier had gotten permission to go off hiking by himself for the first time, and he was feeling very excited and grown up. "Now, Xavier," his uncle warned, "you take care out in those mountains and be home by dark." "Oh, I will," answered Xavier. The screen door slammed behind him, and Xavier started out through the woods. He whistled as he walked along. After Xavier had been hiking for quite some time, he heard a strange noise. He looked around for a minute and finally saw what was making the sound. It was a good-sized sort of bee, but it was different, for on its head were what looked like the long ears of a tiny rabbit. The strange creature flew near him and then darted away. It did the same thing again and again, until Xavier said, "What kind of a critter are you? You look like a bunny, but you act like a bee." "What is it you want?" cried Xavier. "Do you want me to follow you?" Xavier started to cross a clearing in the woods toward the bee bunny or bunny bee. Suddenly, from the bushes on the far side of the clearing came the most ferocious growl he had ever heard. More than a mite frightened, he stooped and picked up a big stick, then stared in amazement as a huge head poked out from the bushes. It was the biggest jackrabbit that Xavier had ever seen. It looked around, then it saw Xavier. The jackrabbit bared its teeth and growled again. Xavier had never heard of a rabbit that growled, and he was scared. But this being the day he was feeling grown up, he raised his stick and started to yell the words his daddy had told him would scare away his fears. "Woogie! Woogie!" The jackrabbit glared at Xavier, but instead of pouncing, it backed up through the underbrush and disappeared. When the jackrabbit was out of sight, Xavier looked around for the bunny bee. Scared or not, he was determined to follow it. Sure enough, it reappeared through the trees. So off they went, the bunny bee buzzing, and Xavier whistling and following along the best he could. Before long, Xavier and the bunny bee came to the bank of a shallow stream. Right in front of them was a waterfall. Before Xavier could catch his breath, the bunny bee flew straight through the waterfall and disappeared. "Poor bitty thing, you're drowned for sure," Xavier exclaimed. Xavier had a keen imagination, though, and when he thought about what the bunny bee had done, he had an idea. Maybe, he thought, there was a cave or path behind the waterfall into which the bunny bee had flown. He slid down the bank of the stream and ducked behind the waterfall. Sure enough, there was a cave. "Looks like I'm off on an adventure now for sure," Xavier said, smiling to himself. Then he plunged into the blackness of the cave. Inside the cave, it was very, very dark. Xavier could see nothing, and he could hear nothing except the rush of the waterfall and the beating of his heart. He pulled out his flashlight and turned it on. Great rainbow-colored spires of rock glittered in the dark, and Xavier imagined that he could see weird creatures hiding in the dim recesses where his light could not reach. Slowly, he inched forward. Now that he was in this weird and wonderful cave, Xavier wondered if he was ever going to get out. He thought he heard something move in the dark. He shined his light toward the noise, but nothing was there. His teeth began to chatter, and to keep his courage up, Xavier cried out in a very timid way, "Woogie, woogie." After what seemed like a very long time, Xavier saw specks of light up ahead. He moved toward them and ran smack into a thick mass of kudzu vine. He could see daylight on the other side of the vine, so he put down his flashlight, took out his knife, and cut his way through. Stepping out of the darkness, he blinked a few times to adjust his eyes to the bright sunlight. Xavier found himself in a beautiful valley, separated on all sides from the mountains he knew so well by walls of kudzu. Before him were rows and rows of cabbages. Bunny bees, like the one Xavier had followed, were flying above the cabbages. As they buzzed around, they swooped gracefully and left behind trails of sparkling crystals. Except for the buzz of these bunny bees, an unnatural silence hung in the air. Xavier turned to pick up his flashlight and saw that the kudzu vine had already grown back and completely covered the cave's opening. "That's strange," he said out loud. "I never knew kudzu could grow that fast." "Everything grows fast in the cabbage patch," said a voice. Xavier almost jumped out of his skin. "Who said that? Who's there?" he demanded. There was a rustling from the cabbage patch, and then two boys stepped out from behind two large cabbages. Xavier wasn't sure what he was seeing. These boys sure didn't look like any kids he had ever met before. "Pleased to meet you," said the first one. "My name is Otis Lee, and this is my pal, Tyler Bow." "Hi, my name is Xavier, and I'm pleased to meet you too." "We didn't mean to be hiding from you, but we were a mite startled when you popped out of our secret cave," explained Otis Lee. "Yeah, we were afraid maybe that oversized mangy rabbit, Cabbage Jack, had finally figured out how to sneak into the cabbage patch," added Tyler Bow. Xavier remembered the jackrabbit he had met. "This Cabbage Jack, is he big with teeth that—" "That's him," said Otis Lee. Xavier looked puzzled. "But why would he want to sneak into your cabbage patch?" "I reckon jackrabbits like carrots better than cabbages." "Oh, it's not the cabbages he's after," said Otis Lee. "It's us kids." "Kids?" "You know, Cabbage Patch Kids." Otis took Xavier by the hand and led him toward the cabbages. "You see, this is where we come from. The bunny bee's magic crystals make the cabbages grow into kids like us. And—" "Otis," interrupted Tyler Bow. hush up and mind your manners. Introduce him to the others. Oops, said Otis. I got so powerful carried away explaining things that I forgot to tell them the coast was clear. It's all right, Otis yelled. He's a friend. Soon kids were coming from everywhere, from behind bushes and from under cabbages. They all looked at Xavier and wondered who he was. A few of the braver ones edged closer, trying to get a better look. One girl named Sybil Sadie, who was not as shy as some of the others, pushed her way to the front, put her hands on her hips, and started asking questions. All right, Otis, who is this? Xavier. He's a friend, Otis Lee said. Xavier grinned. Hi, Sybil Sadie, he said. But Sybil Sadie wasn't quite ready to be friends. How did he get here? She demanded. Before Otis Lee could answer, Tyler Bow said, Don't act like a snippy varmint, Sybil Sadie. He's okay. Otis Lee continued to introduce the other kids. This is Rachel Marie, Ramie for short, and Marilyn Suzanne. And this is Baby Dodd. Baby Dodd looked up at Xavier and reached out his arms. Whoa, he said. He's still pretty young, said Ramie. Whoa is his way of saying hello. Xavier blushed. Afraid I don't know much about babies, he said. Well, said Tyler Bow, you'll sure learn fast enough around here. I don't reckon you've had time to notice, but this valley is just about filled up with Cabbage Patch Kids. Our friend, Colonel Casey the stork, tries to find homes for us, but it's hard work. And Lavender McDade, who? Interrupted Xavier. I guess I better fill you in on Lavender McDade and what she's up to, said Otis Lee. Lavender is a greedy old woman who lives south of here. She's mean as a snake. There's an old gold mine near her place, and she's trying to get it going again. She wants to make us kids her slaves and force us to work in the mine. The worst part is she's not alone. She's got Cabbage Jack helping her. Sometimes she brings in others, too. Now that she's got her greedy heart set on gold, there's no knowing what kind of ugly creatures she'll have creeping about. How do you protect yourselves? Xavier asked. Lavender hasn't yet found out where the Cabbage Patch is. Of course, we kids can't stay in the patch all the time. We like to go outside and have adventures. So we have learned how to trick her. Xavier nodded. You kids could use some help, he said. Then he glanced at the sky and saw that the sun was setting. He said, It's getting dark, and I promised I'd be home for supper. Oh, Xavier, please don't leave, said Tyler Bow. Don't worry, Xavier said. This has been a fantastic discovery, and I'll be back to help you defeat old Lavender McDade. He waved to the kids, ducked back into the cave, and soon was on his way home. Now that's the story of how Xavier found the Cabbage Patch Kids. But it's not the only one about the kids. There's a heap more. And if you're lucky, I'll bet you'll get to hear them all.
So, that was the Cabbage Patch Kids, a Xavier Fantastic Discovery from 1984. So please like, subscribe, share, and comment, and have a groovy day. Our next book will be Dune Attack of the Giant Sea Worms, Part 2.